So we'll get started. A pleasant good afternoon to everyone. Um, Welcome on behalf of Dr. Tendai Dora, our Regional Director here at the NJSBDC at Rutgers-Newark. I would like to welcome you to today's webinar called Engaging the Ideal Online Customer. For those of you who may not be aware of what the SBDC is, it stands for Small Business Development Centers. We are the premier provider of one-on-one business consulting and training services for small businesses and entrepreneurs in the state of New Jersey. More particularly, businesses that reside in Essex County, New Jersey. We are one of 12 centers in the NJSBDC network, each center being responsible for one or more counties. The goal of the SBDC, again, is to provide one-on-one business counseling or consulting, and this may be in the areas of marketing, procurement, import-export, access to capital, or any area that impacts or affects small businesses. And we also offer training services and programs on different topics in the form of in-person events and online webinars and programming. To take advantage of these services, all we ask is that you request counseling or consulting from your local SBDC. You can also visit our main website or headquarters website, which is NJSBDC, and select your county, which will then allow you to complete a request for counseling. And within 24 to 48 hours, a consultant will reach out to you to help you through your business, any questions you have relating to your business. For the benefit of those who are attending today's webinar, audio has been disabled, although I see that we may have a smaller group. So depending on how it goes today, I may enable audio if you have questions. That allows it to be a little bit more interactive. But we will be taking questions through the duration of the presentation. So please feel free to either post it in the chat, the Q&A section, or as I said, if we enable audio as we go along, you may be able to ask your questions. If we do allow that, we do ask that you please mute your microphones after you've asked your question. That way we don't have a lot of feedback during the presentation. A copy of today's slide presentation, as well as a video recording of this webinar, will be emailed out within 24 to 48 hours of this webinar. So please be on the lookout in your email. At the end of this webinar, you will be presented with an evaluation form. We do value your feedback, and right now we're in the planning stages for 2021, so your feedback is greatly appreciated in helping us figure out which programs we would like to keep and which new programs we would like to introduce in the upcoming year. So please it'll just take 1 to 2 minutes of your time. So it's now my pleasure to introduce to you our presenter for today's webinar, Cecilia Henderson. Cecilia is the owner of WSI Marketing Edge. It is a digital marketing firm here in New Jersey. She is also a SBDC consultant in the area of marketing for our center here, NJSBDC at Rutgers-Newark. So without further ado, I'll turn today's presentation over to Cecilia.
Thank you so much, Priscilla, for having us here today. And thanks for everybody who has dialed in. And I'm sure as we go through, we'll probably be able to let up a bit on the microphone. It is just that if we keep them open, it's amazing how rustling papers and fabric can sound to everybody else. So, we always try to keep that best experience in mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share, well, first I'm going to find the thing, and then I'm going to share my screen. Oh, Priscilla, you have to enable me to share my screen.
Sure. My apologies here. I thought I made you co-host already. I think you should be able to, let me stop my share. I think you're good to go.
Yeah, now I can see it. I saw it shift. So here we go. Share the screen. Share. Get rid of Zoom. All right. I think that hopefully you can see my screen. And this is a very interesting topic, customer engagement in the days of the pandemic. Online, absolutely critical for many businesses. And we've found at this point in time that businesses that really have a weaker presence are really recognizing the need to strengthen them. And you have a platform that you use when you're dealing with your clients online. It's your website, it's your social media, it's your email, any other kind of digital tool. But the challenge is making sure that you're reaching that right person. And so lots of tools out there, but we're going to kind of drill down on how we can make sure that we're doing that. And of course, once we engage that customer, given what we know about them, it's going to be very important to decide what to say to them and where to say it. And so just a little about me. My background is marketing. So I do own a digital marketing agency here in New Jersey. But my background is marketing for many years, and worked in a variety of companies. And these are larger companies. The neat thing about that is that when you work for larger companies, you have fewer budget constraints, and you are actually able to use all parts of the marketing mix. But you understand that you don't always have access to them, and nobody ever has enough money. So the idea is, understanding what to use when in order to get the biggest or best results. So the reason this class was put together, I think, was really to encourage people to be more customer focused. We're going to talk about why that's so important. Many of us have come out of a classical marketing approach, but marketing has changed. And we're going to talk about what's going on with our customer and focus on how customers make that journey from, perhaps a stranger to one that's ready to buy from you, and what you do to influence that journey. When we think about traditional marketing, we tend to think of, when I grew up, it was the 4 Ps. Let's put it that way. You would talk about product, price, promotion, place, and those were where we spent our time. And when you think about what that is saying, it's all very internally focused. It's and just drilling down, when we think about the product, it's not that you don't need to know this now, but the product focus was, what does a customer want? What needs does it satisfy? What features and benefits? How the customer is going to use it? What does it look like? All the specs. How's it branded? How's it differentiated? And let's think about the price. The price is, what's the value of it? What is the value that it brings? What's the competition charging? So that, are there established price points for products or services? And when I say product, I also mean services here. Is a customer price sensitive? Is there any price elasticity? Once you get, if I raise my price by $5, do I lose my clients, or does it make no difference at all? And how much would I have to raise in order to lose a percentage of them? What discounts should you offer to your different kinds of customers, or maybe even to certain segments of your market. And once again, how do you price compared with your competitors? And that would be based on your features and benefits. Are you offering more or a better service quality or something? That might influence whether or not you match, or you are premium, or whether you are at a discount. And then distribution or place. Where do you sell your product, essentially? So where would a buyer come to look for it? If they look in a store, what kind? Do you have access to the kind of distribution channels that you would need in order to get into that store? Or do you need to have your own sales force, or do you send catalogs? What do your competitors do? All of this is very important about, how you are getting your product out there. And then, of course, what are you going to say? This is the fourth classic P, which is promotion. Where and when can you get your marketing messages across? How are you going to do that? What are your channels? TV, radio, billboard, PR, maybe the internet. And then, what's the best time? Is there seasonality? Are there things that you need to do at certain times of the year? Halloween's coming, Christmas is coming after that. And of course, always looking at what your competitors are doing in this area. So those would be the four classic Ps, but there's more Ps. They've added more Ps. These are things that are considerations in marketing your product. So you got those other Ps down. Now we got to look at people, packaging, and positioning. Well, why is that important? So people are important because, they make the difference. And so it could be, how are they doing the work? Are you resourcing your people enough to get the work done? Are you serving your customers properly? So, where are people important? Think about Starbucks. They have a certain type of person that works in a Starbucks. I mean, people's part of their strategy. But if you're not a Starbucks or a customer-facing person, you might have other people in your business. How do they contribute to the business? Are you well enough resourced to get things done? Or are you biting off more you can chew because you're under-resourced? So the other piece is around choosing to do things in-house or outsourcing them. So people decisions are important when it comes to marketing your product. Packaging. Well, if you expand this really greatly, think that this is branding, but specifically on packaging, first impressions matter. And we know this. There's thousands of dollars spent every day on companies who are trying to decide what their packaging should look like. What do people see when they look at your offering, and how does it compare to the competition? So if, for example, you're saying that you're a premium priced product and your packaging doesn't look premium, there's a disconnect, because the first thing they see is the packaging, right? So they'll walk away. They're not going to open the jar. They're not going to, make the spritz and smell the perfume. They're going to look at it, and you will miss the try. So packaging becomes critically important. But you can see how that actually, at a higher level, becomes branding. What are you communicating about your business overall? And then finally, positioning, what is the one word or phrase that defines your product or service relative generally to other competitive offerings? So if you think about positioning, on a two-dimensional graph, maybe, price from low to high, quality from low to high, where would you put your business? Those are two attributes that you could use to position. But proper positioning really allows extraction of that maximal value. So let's say you have a product that really does look like it is, extremely high quality and extremely, that it has high value, but yet you're pricing it at a budget. You could be leaving money on a table. Same thing with different kinds of services. Maybe you've priced a service that might be inappropriately priced. You're doing something that somebody else might charge 3 times more, but you're doing it for your price. You're missing your opportunity to get that value out of it. But in all of this, 3 Ps, 4 Ps, the question is, what about your customer? What about them? Who are these people that we're trying to reach? What do they need? Where do they live? What are their preferences? All of this is something that is missed when you think about those classic marketing areas that everybody is trained to look at and know very well. Yeah, you hear the word customer every once in a while, but it's really not at the center. It's very much a navel gaze. You're just looking inwardly. And maybe you have to do that, but at some point, you got to take a step back and think very strongly about the customer. What problem are you solving for them? The thing is that we talk about how things have changed. It used to be that customers just listened to features and benefits and they made decisions. But in this day and age, they have more power than ever before. With the advent of the internet, the advent of social media, they've got more information. They have the ability to impact brands. And, oftentimes we'll find that, especially if we're selling something that is of higher value or offering a service that is of higher value, you rarely will run into an uninformed customer, which means they're kind of further down that path to a decision by the time we see them. I mean, there was some study done that, basically, people who walk into a Best Buy to buy a television, they've already been on the internet and done some research. They know what the features are they should be looking for. What they want to understand is how they want to now feel it, smell it, touch it, but they have already been informed. So that's what we mean by further down that path to a decision than ever before. And of course, they have much more competing for their attention. And there are many, many channels that you can use to reach your customers. So while they're selectively consuming information, we're busy trying to get them information. And there are a lot of different ways to get them that information. And they have competing interests, and they're not always shopping. So, that's one of our basic challenges. So the impact of these changes is that we as marketers or business owners really need to bring more focus to who the customer is and how they buy, what they need to know, and when they need to know it. And so when you think about all of these changes and the fact that we're becoming more customer centric, it's had a huge impact. It's increased this need for digital marketing, because if you're not online and people are doing research about lawyers or, buying a car or buying a television or finding a hair salon online, that's important. Content marketing becomes very important as well. What are you going to say? You've got to have something that you're communicating to your clients and customers. You also want to be thinking about driving engagement early in the process. In other words, let's not wait until they walk into the store. Let's see if we can get some messaging to them sooner. Let's see if we can find email addresses and start communicating with these people in advance. So customer education is going to be key. And a lot of customers are looking to learn, especially, again, if you're not selling something that is very inexpensive and it doesn't really take a lot of, the cost of being wrong is really low for the customer, then okay, it's a little bit different. But when things become more impactful to their lives and to their budget, education is going to be important. And the people that provide that education are better positioned to be the ones that actually provide the solution. So let's think about who your customers are and how you can be looking at them. You want to look at them in terms of demographics, the things that they do, the habits that they have. Perhaps you describe them by geography. They're urbanites, they're not suburbanites, or they're rural, or they live on the East Coast. What are their travel patterns? Are their travel patterns such that they're daily commuters? Are they people that never leave home? Are they frequent travelers to Europe? All of this is something that you can find out about your average customer types. And then I would also think of your customer type in terms of where they stand in the stage of buying. Are they early in the decision-making process, or are they late in the decision-making process? And from all of this, you can actually create a persona, and we're going to talk about this. Because the big challenge that we have is we need to know who these customers are, and based on that, know what we're going to say to them, and know where you're going to try to deliver these messages. So as they're wandering around the internet, where will you drop messages that they can see? Or, perhaps you do have a robust email list, or your website is a place. But in other words, you can try to sort through your customers so they'll self-select to tell you a little bit more about themselves. So based on what you know, what are you going to say to them? So here's a little exercise. My question to you is, how many contacts do you think it takes before a casual contact becomes a qualified lead? So casual contact could be somebody that you met at a networking meeting, or somebody that you were introduced to by another client, or somebody that you just happen to randomly run into. Is it just one time? So everybody I meet is a possible customer, so they're a lead. 5 times, 8 times, 13 times. If you think about it, I think you might find that it's actually far more than we think. So there's estimates that it could take between 8 and 13 times before a total stranger could become a lead. Now, when we think about contacts, don't stress out and think, oh, I have to call somebody 13 times, because a contact can be many things. And we're going to talk about all the things a contact could be. The fact is, though, that when you're thinking about your customer and where they are in their journey, there's that funnel. And I probably have it represented here at some point. In fact, here it is, except for the slide won't progress. So here is what we're trying to do. We're trying to focus on this customer journey. The classic way of looking at a customer journey is by using a funnel approach. Those people at the top of the funnel may be aware of your product or business. Then as we move down, there are people who have interest in your business. And then eventually you have people who have a desire for what it is you do. These are true prospects. And then finally, at the end, you have people who take action. These people are customers. So what happens, and the reason why we use a funnel to represent it, is that the number of individuals in each section is declining as you get closer and closer to purchasing. So before I was talking about how long does it take before somebody, how many touches, let's say, would it take to move somebody down a funnel from a total stranger to a possible lead? That's really up in the before the awareness area and possibly getting down into interest, right? And then you're going to have a number of interactions that take them from interest to action. Again, this example that I'm talking about, or this hypothetical, is probably more for things that cost a significant amount of money. For those who are working in markets where they're selling items that, or offering a service that is of relatively low cost, similar kind of journey happens, but it happens so fast, it's hard to influence. I mean, you can influence it by being there, but you don't necessarily always have to have everything so mapped out as to what's a message that you would tell somebody who truly is in that red desired area versus the blue interest area. But it's just important to understand where that customer is in terms of the extent that you express or put effort into your activities. So you could have different objectives by where they are on this particular funnel. So let's say that you are focused on awareness. The question would be, how do you make buyers aware of your products or services? What's the outreach strategy? It's almost a branding activity that you're doing up here at the very top. On the other hand, when it comes to interest, so maybe people know your brand, but how do we gain their interest? How are we going to share information that is going to pique their interest? And that's where your content strategy comes in. what are you saying? So first there's just branding, get your name out there, get your name out there. Then it's, what do we say about ourselves that is in a bit more depth? How do we make this information available and where? So digitally, we're talking about website. We could be talking about on YouTube. We could be talking about Google reviews, but there are ways that you get people's interests. The next one is desire. Now you got somebody who might actually be interested in what you're doing. How do you interact personally with that person to make this emotional connection? So if somebody's interested and they're on your website, does a chat bot pop up? Or if they are on your social media, you can have a chat bot there, but also is your content there helping them, again, make a decision? Is it educating them so that they become the best customer that you can have, so they understand the value of what it is you bring? And then finally, action. So action is making that purchase where you, when you know that somebody's really ready and you're ready to push it, you ask for the business, right? And they always say that if you have an ad, you should always have a call to action, which is a click here, act now, call now. So you're always going to be focused on where you're going to put that type of information and make sure that you're accessible. We don't do ads. If you're going to advertise, you're going to do some kind of call to action. At some point, it might be learn more. Perhaps that's up in the interest area. But if you are further down the funnel, you might be saying something like buy now, click here to buy now. Let's say your e-commerce store, you could be saying something like that. So you need to think about your marketing channels and your platforms that you're using and how to engage in this way and across all of the digital opportunities that you have. And then, of course, we talk about this funnel in terms of this journey to customer. So down here, they're customers. The next things you want to do, you want to keep those customers coming back. And so that is a retention strategy. What are you going to say to people to, A, remind them that they bought from you, remind them why they bought from you, and remind them to buy from you? So this is all part of that whole cycle of communication, again, centered around the customer, less centered around the product as we were before. So here's an example, which was a hairstylist that we found. So before they launched their hairstylist, their hair salon, to get people aware, they ran a PR campaign. So this gives you an example of what you might do at different phases. So they ran a PR campaign a couple of months prior to launch. They promoted some award that they got. They promoted that their stylists were there. They talked about their qualifications. And they actually had a list that they were able to do direct messaging to. So this is how you get your name out there. Now, the other thing that they did was, now we're getting closer to launch, they started executing direct mail campaigns to offer a free consultation or maybe a discount. And they used research to support that, this would be working. So they knew that, their competitors did this and it was successful. And they also know, because they've been in the business, loyalty is key. So it was really important to offer an incentive to get them to come into the door, because once they get in the door, they're feeling like they'll stay with us. Now, close to the opening time of the new salon, they actually had some events. So, they're out of the digital world, they're in the real world, but they advertise that through the local press and also on social media to get some local buzz. So this is like, oh, this is the new cool place in town to get your hair done. And then in terms of driving that action and getting them into the purchase, clear calls to action, asking for the business on the Facebook, call to reserve, call to book, call in order to receive the discount or the offer. So you can see how in this particular instance, they knew that they couldn't ask people to do the items in the call now to book 4 months before the place was open. But what they could do was get a brand out there and tease. So this just gives you an idea of the types of things that you can do as you're launching things, or even for things that are launched, you need to understand that you can move all of these levers at the same time. So when I was talking about how many times you needed to interact with a client or a prospect before they became a real lead, and then what the journey is between being a real lead and then turning into a customer. This is really a good example, and I truly wish that I could find the original. I've seen this in presentations many times, and I found it online, so I'm sharing it here and I'm providing the source. This may have come from Microsoft, but this shows the journey between prospect and customer. In this one, they're estimating that it takes a dozen times to interact with someone before they go from prospect to customer. Now, these interactions, what are they? Are they somebody picking up the phone? No. They could be, I saw your branding ad. They could be, I saw a post on Facebook or on LinkedIn. It could be that they met you face to face at a meeting. They have your card. It could be that they have seen an email that you sent out, or you put them in an email drip campaign. All of those types of things would be considered contacts. And in fact, we know that many people really don't have an organized approach in going after an individual prospect, which means that if you have a more rational approach and you plan this out, you have a greater opportunity once you've gotten a prospect to get them into a customer, because a lot of your competitors give up quite early in the game. Now, this is very much oriented towards a sales organization. So if you think about that, by the time contact number 4 comes along, let's say they've sent a brochure, they made a phone call, they made an in-person visit. By the time you get here to contact number 4, it's telling you almost 90% of people have given up, because everybody's trying to get that low-hanging fruit, right? I'm trying to get the person that if I talk to, they're going to give me the money right now. The problem is that for certain types of purchases, it's very unlikely that a very short interaction is going to lead to a conversion or a sale. So you really do have to be more present in the mind of the customer, whether it is adding them to a 5-step email campaign. Well, that's 5 contacts, 5 times that they see your name, whether they open the thing or not. If you invite them to a webinar, if you then say, let's have coffee. So the point being that there are many ways to reach out to your customer. You definitely want to organize it in such a way that some of it is almost automatic. So now we've talked about all the things that you need to do to get to your customer, but we still haven't really dug into who this person is. And there are so many ways to describe customers, and the better that you can describe your customer, the better you'll communicate. So sometimes people say, all right, I'm just going to do pure demographics. And I found this is really interesting about, you know, where all these generations are defined. And I won't tell you which one I'm in, but it's a wonderful one. So we talk about just by age, and they have data that is psychographic data that allows you to almost stereotype people based on when they were born. But we know that that's probably not good enough. I mean, okay, what am I going to do? Because I know that, you know, Generation X is committed to juggling work with family time and favor work-life balance. Well, depending on what you offer, that might be important. But I think there's more that we can know about them than this. Here's some more information. And the other piece is that some of the information that you have here may be not something that you want. It's not that you're going to walk up to somebody and actually say these things, but if you approach them with that in mind, sometimes it might come off a little, you know, presumptive. So while we may know psychographics associated with different demographics, this is not the place to stop. I'm not sure it's a place to start, but a lot of people do think that it has value. The implications here are, what are you saying to them and how you say it? So the way you might talk to somebody from the greatest generation is different from what you might say to somebody who is a millennial. And they'll respond differently. Also, the channels. So we know, for example, if you're looking at social media, that everybody's on Facebook, but younger people tend to be on Instagram. We know that even younger people tend to be on TikTok, although since the pandemic, I'm not even going to say who's on TikTok because I think everybody's on that too. But there are trends you can kind of look and see, and periodically they publish them. So if you're ever looking and saying, okay, I think I know my audience has a certain age, you can find data that will tell you what percentage of people who are on the internet and who are on that age are on any given social media platform. So the other thing, though, is rather than just describing people purely by their age, I think it's going to be important to look deeper. And one of the tools that you can use to help you is called a persona, which is an avatar or maybe a fictionalized representation of each of your segments. Sometimes people only have one type of customer that they serve, but oftentimes you'll find that you have a fairly diverse set of customers, and it's important to understand why you have them and what each of them is driven or motivated by. Why does each of them come to you? They might have different reasons. So it tends to be a bit more detailed. And the benefit here is that you get clarity about your communications and it helps you with your strategy and execution. So think about it this way too. If you ever got to the point where you needed help with your communications, you could hand somebody a persona that you've created and they would know who they're talking to if they were going to write blog posts for you, for example, or if they were going to do an email campaign targeting a particular segment. It's very helpful to understand exactly who is the audience. What you might do is to take a look at your customer base and you segment them and you say, all right, I think I have 3 or 4 different groups of customers. For each group of customers, you go through an exercise where you say to yourself, who are these people? What do they want to know? What is it that they want? What are their particular drivers in terms of their pain points that might make them come to us? And then if they come to us, what do they get out of it? Ultimately, why do they buy from us? What can we offer? What's our unique selling proposition? What's the experience that we can give them that is the best? Also, when we look at them and we break our customers apart like this, we may find that there's a group of customers that you can find in a particular place that makes sense for you to be. So if you find that you have a lot of people who are getting married and they're female, maybe you should be on Pinterest. It's just a matter of understanding where these particular folks hang out, given what you offer them, right? If you're a wedding planner, that may be a place to be. So as you work through this, you basically gather all the information you can find from all the sources that you have. So if you're running a store, you have all of the people that are customer facing in your store who can help you walk through this. They may know more than you know because they're seeing them and interacting with them every day. For those of us with smaller businesses, then you're just going to gather information from the sources that you have. Are people emailing you? Are there frequently asked questions? What are the things that people always say to you when they meet you and find out what you do? And who are the people that say things like that? So this is a good exercise that gets you to make it very clear who you should be talking to. So this is something that I had created as an example. Thinking about that salon that we were talking about, we have a salon that in this particular instance has a few areas of interest. One of those areas is that they have a current base that is the women who live nearby, right? They have other women that they want to get. So let's say that a corporate office opened nearby or an office park with multiple businesses. That's an opportunity for them. They see that as an opportunity. A second thing or a third thing is that people tend to use salons for, weddings, events, and they bring their wedding party. So they want to reach out to wedding planners and event planners. And then the next thing is that, they do know that their local residents and even the corporate people have kids that are having proms or sweet 16s or quinceañeras. So these are targets for them. They've had a discussion. These are their targets. They are looking for how they find these targets or how they reach these targets. And so that kind of planning then enables them to dig deeper and to decide how they're going to communicate with them. So for each one of those, they go through that same exercise that I just described, where you're understanding what their needs are, they're understanding why they buy from you, and what it is that you could bring to the table that would really make them happy. And in the end, you could come up with something that looks like this, where you're able to actually name that person. And it becomes important because then if you're talking to your team about what you're going to do for a particular segment, you say, what am I going to do about Serena? And everybody knows that Serena is my local client who lives nearby, and she's my bread and butter. That is my current base. I can't afford to lose her. I need to keep her. I may not need to do a lot of new promotion, but I certainly need to keep the ones that I've got. So here you go. You're talking about describing this woman demographically. You're talking about understanding her needs in terms of her information needs. Is it quiet and relaxing? She's got 2 children. What a surprise. She needs quiet and relaxation. What doesn't she want? She doesn't want to wait because she doesn't have a lot of time. She doesn't want to pay for poor service, and she doesn't want to be disturbed while relaxing. So maybe she's got kids, but she doesn't want to be disturbed. This even gets into, how do I execute my business? So maybe I have a no children policy, because I know a lot of people are coming here to kind of get a little bit of peace. We love children, but we also want some peace. So you can see how knowing this may even migrate into how you actually execute the physicality of your business. So why does she buy from us? She buys from us because we're local, convenient to her home. We know that she knows our brand and our name. We're familiar to her. And by the way, she's got friends that go here. So you can get to this level of detail, and it's going to help you create things for her that are very interesting to her. We also can tell based on a little bit about her age, but because she's our installed base, she's our current customer, we can always ask. So she's on Facebook and Instagram. And remarketing and retargeting are different strategies that we would use in order to reach her. And she also should be on our mail list. So that's how you'll communicate with a Serena. And that's what we say, it's a Serena. So now that's great for, brick and mortar and things like that. But let's say that you're selling a service or a high-end service. Let's say that instead of saying that it's Serena and she's a local resident, it could be that Serena is a purchasing manager in an industrial equipment company. You're going to answer the same questions here for that type of person as you would if she's a local resident and a homeowner. So you may have a segment that could be a purchasing manager. We may say that they are generally of a certain gender, of a certain age. They have certain considerations. Their biggest concern is making sure that you hit the budget. They don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to have to deal with people being irritated with their decisions. Now, the other thing that you want to do is you're going to think about, for that, what are their most common questions or challenges? What are their objections? These are things that you should be able to categorize. The other piece is understanding what the red flags are. So if you see somebody who has certain kinds of attributes, maybe they're not really your client when you start to dig down into them. Again, this is more for, people that are doing services. Who are people that I should really pursue versus people that I should leave alone? Well, for example, I'm in digital marketing. If I meet somebody who is a potential client, but I find out that not only do they not have a website, they don't ever want to have a website, and they don't believe in digital marketing. You can't believe that I'm going to spend a lot of effort marketing to somebody like that. So I put, like, let's say you own a steakhouse, but the client who fits your persona in so many other ways. They've got the income, they've got the neighborhood, they hang out at the right places. There's only one problem: they don't eat beef. Okay, that's such an obvious one, but sometimes you may find, just much more, how can I put it, subtle things that would tell you, well, you're not exactly in the right place. So doing this persona exercise really can help you. In this instance, you can look at your avatar or your persona and say, what am I going to do for her? I have to continue to get business from Serena. This isn't find Serena and get more business. This is just continue to keep her as my customer base. I'm going to have a loyalty program, create a referral program. She's going to be included in all my holiday specials. And I'm going to talk to her about, some other services that we have. And I want to make sure that if she's ever Googling, I still pop up. I also want to make sure that my social media messaging is consistent. And I will make sure that if I have a loyalty program or a referral program, or I'm offering a seasonal discount, it's visible on our Facebook and Instagram accounts. So this is taking it all the way from, hey, I've identified this segment that is important to me, to now what am I going to do for her? And then, of course, we could say, what do I want to say to her? Sometimes when you're trying to reach your customer, you got a challenge. What do you say? Do I have to create everything new? What you can do is you can create a source document or a positioning statement for your business containing basically your critical core messages about, like, each of your types of services. It's going to be kind of a source document for you and for anybody who helps you. And it's got all of your important facts. Now, the thing about a document like this is this isn't really something that you use for your customers. This is for you, your own internal usage, sourcing, and clarification. It's something that you would go back to as part of your planning process to say, do I need to revise anything? Do I need to take anything out? Have I got new services that I need to put into this? Ultimately, you're going through this exercise because you want to get more business and you want to solidify the business that you do have. So it's going to help you understand your unique selling points for each persona that you create. And that way, when you're marketing, you're not just saying the same thing to everybody, which is kind of generic boilerplate. You could be the salon down the street, or you could be the salon across town. No, you're doing something that is unique for that particular type of customer. And you're crafting a really much more perfect message. And it allows you to fine-tune your content strategy, as I talked to you before. So just checking to see, we may have an opportunity. I know we're going to have time for questions because I've moved through this rather rapidly, but what are we doing with all of this information? We've talked about understanding our customer deeply. You create your segmentations. You can size your opportunity. How many Serenas do we have versus how many Bobs and how many Jills? You can customize your message. What do I tell Serena versus what do I tell Jane? And then you bring this into your CRM, your customer relationship management tool, or your email. It allows you to create campaigns that are specifically built for those segments. And you are going to leverage the information that you've learned through going through the process in order to have something that really resonates with that target customer. So this is where your content marketing comes in. And we talked about the content plan that we already talked about. And you can take that and craft really nice messages for them. So ultimately, again, I just want to remind you about how we're talking about the importance of this funnel and all of these activities that we're taking to move people from the top to the bottom The more we can know about our customers, the more likely we are to be able to influence that journey and to move more of them down there. If we are really generic, we're no more differentiated than anybody else, and we have, you know, nothing perhaps that sparks that customer. But if we then are more custom, then each of those touches that we talked about, those 13 interactions, maybe those other 12 interactions that you have, become much more relevant, and you have higher engagement from the people that you're trying to interact with. And engagement is a sign of buying. So what is engagement? Engagement is clicking like. Engagement is sharing content. Engagement is filling out a form. Engagement is downloading a white paper. Those things are signals that somebody is interested in shopping. So how are you going to talk to them? Well, you want to use different channels, as we talked about. So again, you're not being obsessive, or you're not overdoing it in any one thing. You need to be firing on multiple cylinders in a sense. We have our website where we communicate. Obviously, we have emails, whether they are email campaigns, monthly newsletters, campaigns that are driven by customer interaction. So the customer does download something, you send them something else. So it's a constant flow of information. Your social media is there. What are you posting about? And where are you posting it? What are you advertising about? Because sometimes simple posts don't do it. You have to advertise in order to get out of algorithm jail. So you want to be seen by your audience. Advertising helps you to be seen by your audience. And of course, you could be doing Google ads, or what I'm calling here pay-per-click. Paid search engine ads are another way to get to your target audience. And of course, this is also, we don't want to neglect your traditional channels. Are fine. You know, you could have print brochures if you feel that it's relevant to you. You could be doing real mail. You could be doing any other type of display type of advertising. But it's going to be driven by who your customers are and what they do. Let's say that you have an audience of extreme senior citizens. Well, maybe the traditional channels are the place for you to be. Digital doesn't solve every problem, but in this particular instance, if you've got to be in front of a customer, it is the solution. So I'm coming down to the end, and what I want to do before I just summarize takeaways and things like that, Priscilla, do you think we can open it up and see, just have a Q&A session at this point in time?
Yes, I think we can. I've given everyone, okay, so I've enabled audio for everyone. If they need to ask a question, they can unmute themselves. So if you have a question, you can just unmute your microphone and you can ask.
The other thing that you can do is you can put it in the chat. I will see it. I think Asira Castillo had the right answer 7 to 12 times before somebody actually becomes a real factor in your work life. So everybody knows how to reach their target customers. Does anybody have a lot of different segments for their business? Is anybody willing to share who their segments are? Yes.
Hi, are you able to hear this?
Yes, I am.
Oh, hi. Thanks for the webinar. It was pretty informative. I have a question, and I'll try to ask it as best as I can. Okay, so I have an entertainment agency, and I would like to work with event planners, and these event planners use entertainment agencies like myself to subcontract the entertainment services for whatever event. Now, the problem that I'm having is that it's pretty easy for me to catch their interests when I present my services, but when it comes down to the pricing, that's where I lose the lead, because I assume they are getting much cheaper rates by other entertainment agencies. So the easy way to answer that is, okay, well, do a comparative analysis and see where your price stands in relationship to the other ones. But I, it's not that easy because the prices are not posted on the agency's website or anything like that, and these prices are not the prices that they would give out to a direct client. These are a separate set of prices that these agencies provide to other vendors like wedding planners. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it definitely makes sense. For those of us who provide services, it's very hard sometimes to know how to price because you can't go online and find a price list from somebody. Maybe more so now than ever before, but it's interesting because you have the opportunity potentially. I mean, are you supposed to be in a guessing game, or can you say, if you're reaching out to somebody, what's your average budget for your services? I mean, if you if in other words, well, maybe I'm under not understanding it. Question is, who is paying you? If the person who's paying you is the event planner, then the discussion can be, what is your average budget? And they may tell you.
Right. That's my angle. But when I ask that, they don't tell me.
Hmm.
So I'm playing a guessing game,
Yeah.
and I continue to lower my pricing, but there's also a price formulation that I follow because I need to make sure that my prices cover expenses and labor and things like that. So it's kind of, I'm in this weird gray guessing game when it comes to pricing. But I do ask them what is based on the tier events that they service, what is the budget that they know that they can work with, so that then I know what kind of packages and pricing I can provide, but I don't get an answer.
Yeah, this is another thing that people do sometimes is they don't give one price. They just, well, and the issue is that you got to be able to change your services based on different pricing. So you have, a budget, a mid-range, and a high-end. Budget includes this, mid-range includes that, and high-end includes the other. The other piece that people will do sometimes is, I mean, almost do a little secret shopping. Um, you know, if you can get people to investigate this type of thing. The question I think I would have is there a standard percentage of um, price that an event planner is going to reserve for entertainment? Is it 10%, 20%? We don't know. Um, so it's not, and you're right, it's not an easy question. It is trial and error. And if you're finding that you're losing consistently, it means maybe it does need to be lower, but I would still try to figure out as much as I could what else is going on here. Are there people that are kind of allied with you who also work with event planners who might be able to give you some insights?
No, the event industry is highly competitive. Nobody gives away any information.
Yeah. So I think it is just going to be continuing to make bids, and maybe you can in some way stratify your bids.
Okay.
And you can stratify them and say, I don't know how you do this, so I'm just making this up. My low end is I'll do it for 2 hours. You can get it for me. My high end is I'll do it for 4 hours. Not only that, I'll bring flowers or something like that. Do you see what I'm saying? Is that, you de-feature your lower offering.
Okay.
No, one thing that you do know is, well, or you should have some insight into is, what are other people who do exactly what you do? What are their costs? Because you have those costs too.
Right.
Now, hopefully you don't have any unusual costs that somebody else doesn't have. And it's possible that you have some things that you don't have to pay for, which gives you an advantage, just a profitability advantage. because that doesn't mean you have to lower your price. Ultimately, we need to get as much value for our work as possible. And so that's the danger of taking your price down every second. So I think this is, sadly, I don't have a neat answer for you other than trying to stratify by defeaturing if you're going to go lower, and then seeing what you can do in terms of the competitive research, even if it's anecdotal or going to salons or other places where people are planning and finding out how much they paid, all of that.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Other questions around targeting? Tara, you should be able to unmute.
Hi, how are you?
Fine.
Similar to the last person, it's a, pricing issue. But my issue is I'm in a area where a lot of people can do this work as a contractor, or it's just them. So I do after school enrichment classes.
Mm-hmm.
But the business that I have is actually a franchise. So I have a territory in the franchise. So of course I have, royalty fees to pay. The people that work for me aren't contractors. They have to be employees. So now I have, payroll taxes and workers' comp insurance, et cetera, that adds to my operating costs that, say, someone else who just likes to do coding can go and say, oh, I'm going to do a coding class, and all they have to do is pay for themselves. So that's kind of so just trying to get either parents and or agencies and municipalities to understand the difference. In some cases has been a struggle.
So when you say understand the difference, understand that you're a that you have a franchise versus an independent contractor?
Right. So if I'm charging, $20 an hour per child in my class, but someone else, and there's 10 kids in the class, for me it's $200, but somebody else could say, oh, well, I'm only going to charge $75 for the hour. As a single person or a person who doesn't have all that overhead, $75 an hour seems pretty good. But, for my business, that, $20 an hour is barely, just a little bit over what my cost is.
Yeah, see, so first of all, does your franchise give you any insight into competitive pricing or any support for the pricing that you have to have?
Right, they do. And so, my pricing is right in the, it's a little above because they base their pricing on Florida, which is a little cheaper state. But they do give us a range. And so I'm like right in the middle of the range. So we do use that. But being, here in the urban markets, it's been a little bit more challenging. Working with nonprofits.
One of the challenges that you have is it's quite honestly, it's hard to tell a school district or somebody that you're trying to serve, oh, well, my pricing is different because I have all this overhead. You can tell me that, but that's not a selling point. Your selling point is going to be something more like, yes, I am charging that. I'm charging $20 per hour per child. Why am I doing that? Because my teachers are certified, because my teachers are vetted, because I am not operating out of my basement.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have to talk about what your value is. And, if there's anything that you can provide about the credibility of the endorsement, the testimonial, the credibility, the security and safety that you guys are doing that a small individual does not do, I think that's really important. So, if you're a one-off person, you can't say my children are never alone with one person.
Right.
So you got to find the incremental to talk to people. And why is that important? Because if somebody is going to pay for your services and they're a school system or what have you, you know, that extra security is a good thing. They're concerned about that. Who's teaching my children? Who's spending time with my kids?
Right. Okay.
Unfortunately, I can't give you any insight into, you know, but I do think, I mean, you're not talking about such a huge difference, but you know, yeah, of course, I want to pay $75. Well, great, but you're not working with a known brand and you're not working with people that have been through the ringer to see if they can work with kids.
Right. Okay.
Those are my thoughts.
Yeah. So I was just trying to figure out a way how to, you know, position that, and that helps.
I think, you know, you position yourself as a premium provider
Mm-hmm.
with established methodologies, all of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions? Pricing is a big thing. I mean, we all have it. I have it. It is, you don't know. But then you also know what your floors are, you know, how low you can't go. And then the question is, well, what can I bring that brings additional value without breaking my bank or my time? So everybody's very quiet.
So I had a question. This is Spencer. So I own a small business loan broker firm, basically, and so we've been primarily trying to reach people online. And my main question is like trying to segment the market. So like anyone who has a decision-making like power at any small business really is someone we're looking to talk to and see if they need, you know, any kind of funding. But like trying to narrow it down from that, because like our market's like the whole nation. We can go nationally, and we can even do stuff in Canada. So it's like it's a very wide variety of industries, and we can really do any business. So it's kind of just like narrowing it down and trying to make it, you know, more specific and trying to have more of a target market is kind of. And also we haven't really made any sales yet. We just like have started about 4 weeks ago. So we're more in just like the marketing phase and launching phase. But you know, my question really is like, do you have any suggestions, or do you have any, you know, ways to get maybe into a niche market or to target a certain segmentation or anything like that?
Well, here's a question for you. Is this a franchise that you've bought?
No.
But it is part of a national organization?
No, we can do any loan in any state is what I meant. Like we can operate nationally.
So one thing that I would say is that you're targeting businesses to make loans to. You want to do business loans.
Yeah, only business loans, no personal loans.
So I ran into a lot of these folks at chambers of commerce, people who do what you do. Now, the reason why I say, okay, these are all people who do what I do, is they do talk to each other. So there is possible to get information by being out there. Secondly, niche is always a good thing, going into a niche market, because that way you can say you're a specialist in a particular area and you have a concentration of clients in a particular area. And then you get some synergies associated with knowing that marketplace. So the question is, which segments are most amenable? And part of that, I think, is a financial analysis, right? So who are the types of people that are likely to need a loan, and overlay that with the kinds of businesses that are easy for you to get to. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of this is going to depend on your outreach, and a lot of you're trying to do things online, but you know, you may have to also do some in-person, old-fashioned, I need to show up at places. And that's kind of hard right now because of course there's not a lot of face-to-face activity going on. But when there was, if you would go to certain types of chamber events, bankers abound. And they all know each other. So I think they talk. But it's rare that I've seen one that says, I specialize in working with brick and mortar businesses, or I specialize in, it's got to be, you do have to go to somebody who's going to really have a need for cash. So people who aren't brick and mortar, people who are operating virtually, you can kind of take them off your list. They're probably not going to be it, right?
Mm-hmm. We've been going for more construction companies because they have a weird balance sheet and banks usually don't like them. We're anything like that uses a lot of equipment because we have some equipment leasing options. We also go with I've been reaching out to a lot of business brokers because they probably have been in contact with business owners, so trying to see where we can fit in there, and then real estate developers because we can do some asset-based lending. So I'm pretty all over the place. It's just like I would like to, I don't know if I even want to narrow it down, but maybe some ideas of like industries. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I actually think the one that you talked about, I mean, and that's the thing when I said it was financial analysis, because, I'm not a financial or accounting person, but there are people that are more prone to need your services. So you do more unconventional work, right?
Yeah, it's alternative lending. So it's like if you don't qualify for a bank loan, these are the people who would come to my company.
So you already named, one of the biggest segments, and you probably have a couple of others. At this point in time, maybe you don't need to be so narrow, but you need to really speak to those segments in terms of what you offer them.
Mm-hmm.
And so in your digital marketing campaigns, in your website, in your email, you would be segmenting in that way and speaking to them specifically about your knowledge of what their special circumstances are. People who can't just go to the bank and talk to the loan officer.
All right. Yeah, that's definitely helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. We're here for you. Question. Let me see.
I have another question. Regarding, the whole social media and having that all set up, that's one thing I do struggle with, because we, right now we're doing virtual classes, of course. We do have constant contact. I mean, I have an account on all of the social media outlets, but it's not my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or it takes me an extremely inordinate amount of time to create the content, et cetera, to, put out. In some cases, we do have some content is created for us by the franchise,
Mm-hmm.
Which somewhat makes it a little bit easier, but in cases I do have to modify it for my market because of course it's, designed for a slightly different market typically. So I do have to make some, small edits to it, but wanted to just get your impression around having or hiring someone to do that. Everyone says, oh, well, just hire a student. They'll do it for you. And I'm like, okay, but they need way too much direction. And sometimes, at least the ones I've hired thus far, maybe I just haven't been good at hiring, but I'm at the point now where I'm like, well, do I just get a firm? Like, I just trying to understand at what point do you move up to that next level to hire someone to actually do it or hire a firm to do it on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because, I've heard, get the summer intern and they're good, except for maybe they don't have the same judgment that you might have, or they don't have the same sensibility. And so that's when you need to perhaps go up a level and get somebody who's a professional to do it. I mean, it's something that I do, for example, but I'm not competing with the student because I do different things. Now, here's the thing. Your social media is, your public representation of yourself. And depending on what you're getting from your franchise, you may there may be just minor modifications that need to be done.
Mhm.
You might consider trying to use a tool like a Hootsuite and hooking up all your social media into this one location so that when you make your changes, you post it centrally and it kind of replicates everywhere. You could try something like that, and that would save you some time. I don't know whether you're in the process of having to go to LinkedIn to do this and then having to go to, Facebook business to do something else or whatever, but you can eliminate at least that piece of it. The other aspect to making this work for you is that when you're trying to reach people, we know that social media reach is limited these days. And so you end up having to pay a little bit to get your post to people that need to see you.
Mhm.
And the challenge is how you reach your decision makers, right? If your decision makers are not parents and they are some disembodied person in an organization, that
Mhm.
um,
Hold
your
on.
social media is kind of more of proof of life. You're posting, you're engaged, they look at you and they say, oh, I see her website, I see that she's posted on social media, I see she's got a blog. This is a real place. This is
Mhm.
just some guy down in the basement. That's what your social media is kind of doing for you in that instance.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I have paid for Facebook in the past, but I haven't found that to be very effective, so I've stopped paying on that
Right.
one.
And part of that, I think, is because you've already told me that your decision maker is a very specific type of person,
Mhm.
right? And so there, it's more of it may be more LinkedIn. Not to say that you need to pay, but you may be doing more networking on LinkedIn. You may be really taking a hard look at your email list and making sure that you got a really good set of people on your list, and you just continue to build your list and you connect with them on LinkedIn. It's that kind of a cycling through. It's not just general posting. You're going to have to probably do some level of prospecting to get to this person. What's their title? What kinds of roles do they normally have? Who makes that decision? And who can influence them? Maybe it's principles that you need. Maybe it's I don't really know, but you got to kind of pick it apart and say, maybe I can't reach this person, but I can reach that person, and that person is going to be a strong influencer.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. So I kind of want to, we talk about all these different tools. Let's see. So yeah, Spencer, I think we already answered your question, but just want to take us back to what we covered. We talked about the fact that we're not going to just harp on ourselves and talk about our products. We are the best people to talk about what it is. And yes, we have to do that. So in the case of you're doing tutoring and your tutoring is a premium, you've got to give that justification as to why it is the case. But at the same time, you got to keep in mind that the person that you're telling this to has concerns. What are their biggest concerns? Are there concerns something around the reliability? Is there something around the effectiveness? Something around making sure that nothing bad happens? So this is why I said, talk about the fact that, we're a national chain. Nobody ever got, fired for using a business or a company that everybody knows. Talk about the fact that we have people who have degrees teaching this class. These are not, fly-by-night individuals. Plus, we probably have vetted them to make sure that they don't have any problems in their background that suggest that they shouldn't be around children. And then finally, we have a proven methodology that we use across the entire United States that has worked well, so that the decision maker then feels more confident, because nobody in a public setting who is spending public money wants to ever be called on the carpet for making a stupid decision that results in a problem. So understanding what's driving or motivating that person is key. And now we know it's possible for us to understand our customers and clients much more deeply because they are online and because we have access to the internet. We don't just read, if you're ever looking at, sections of the paper and you're particularly interested in one thing, you might, look at the New York Times. I love food, so I might look at the New York Times cooking section. I can look at the Washington Post. I can look at, the Boston Gazette or whatever. I mean, those are good places to find stuff. And then, as I demonstrated, you can craft information that's really oriented to what your customers and clients truly need to know, depending on where they are in the buyer funnel. So if they're just up at the top and they need to be aware, and you're entering the market, branding becomes very important. Maybe it is worth spending some money to blast the name of your new loan company and target people that could be looking for loans. Google Ads could be a good opportunity for you. So that's, I think, what you should be taking away from this. And, just in the questions, I can see that everybody is very much focused on how do I find and get to them in an appropriate way and move the dial with these particular customers. So with that, I think that we are I forgot. I want to talk to you about why it's important. We already talked about getting to know your customers, but there is a cost of being wrong. And that is that you spend your time, you spend a lot of time on marketing. So if you had to charge someone an hourly rate, how much would you need to charge them in order to achieve your financial objectives? Have you actually invested your dollars or your time in marketing? And what happens if all of this money that you've spent or time that you spent is spent on reaching the wrong person? Or what happens if you happen to have the right person in mind, but you're spending it in the wrong places? So that's why understanding who that customer is and maybe where they are in that journey is really, really important. So with that, we've already talked about questions, but I'd like to have a few more. I think we just have a couple more minutes. I want to emphasize too that as things come up, everybody who is on the class is eligible to have an hour of consulting with the SBDC. And since this slide deck is going to go out, you'll be able to contact the SBDC to schedule something like that. So Priscilla, what do you think? I don't really see any questions more.
No, I don't either. Just making sure there was one in the Q&A that has already been addressed, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. No, I don't see any questions, and we're right at 4:24. There's about 6 more minutes. In the meantime, like I'll reiterate what I said in the beginning. The slide to today's presentation, it will be sent out along with the recording of this webinar. Please allow to 24 to 48 hours to receive that. And as Cecilia mentioned, everyone on today's webinar will be given the opportunity to have a one-on-one with Cecilia if you so need. She'll probably follow up with you later next week for those that attended today. We do have a full day workshop that will cover some of most of what Cecilia covered here on the webinar and a little bit more. So feel free to register for that. It's not, well, full day, it's from 9 to 2. So it's not full day. It used to be 9 to 4. So we used to call these workshops full day workshops. But I think either way, if you attend a full day workshop or you take advantage of the one-on-one, both will be very helpful to you and helping you with the marketing for your business. So if we don't have any more questions, I'm just giving it 1 more minute. If you have a question, you can post it. If not, we will end today's webinar. I'd like to say thank you to Cecilia for yet again. That's 2 for this week. We're on a roll. 2 webinars this week. Thank you guys again for coming out. We do have other webinars. There's a few more marketing webinars coming up. On tomorrow we have a webinar that deals with e-commerce. If anyone on this webinar is involved with e-commerce, or you're thinking about starting or transition into e-commerce, you can sign up for that webinar by visiting our website at www.rnsbdc.com. All right, so thanks again for attending today's webinar. Thank you, Cecilia, and to everyone, have a great weekend.
Thank you, Priscilla. You have a great weekend as well. Thanks for your help this week.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.